Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this rainy day here in Alicante, in Costa Blanca. Today, we thought it would be very good and wise to talk about the 720 and all the ins and outs you might think or questions you might have today to talk about 720. As you know, 720 was created in 2013 already, and it was pretty much thought for the Spaniard people who never declare worldwide assets abroad. Obviously, this has affected the expat community and obviously created a lot of worry on doing things properly. As you know, we started the 720 doing all through your tax advisors. You couldn't do it through with your digital certificate, and now that has been changed and you will be able to do it. However, it's a very complex file because it requires a lot of filling.
This rainy day, which is even though every day is sunny and today is raining, so it is good to clean the atmosphere. As there are not really a lot of rainy days in Alicante. So good afternoon. This is really good. We speak about this model 720. As we know, the time period for those who became residents last year, it ends on the 31st of March of this year. So it's something that is good to inform who are obligated to present this informative application. And of course, what are the concerns, what are the recommendations? So of course, we will be able, and we invite all the audience in order to, well, to make all the questions they may have in this chat, in Facebook, or in order to, well, to be able for us, Ignacio and myself, to answer those questions directly right now. Okay, well, Ignacio, so let's get started. Let's go right away to the model 720 if you want to, or...
Yes, Pedro. Well, if you wish, Pedro, if you want to start explaining the audience here when and why they need to lodge the 720, what it is,
yeah,
and then we can start the conversation chat. And then while you people, the audience, could send us your questions here on the chat, we'll try to be brief on the presentation and straight to the point. And we've got Guillermo, our tax advisor, here as well, along with us in the audience and in the panel. And yeah, Pedro, please, over to you. Just to start over explaining to us.
Okay, well, Ignacio, I mean, as we know, I mean, of course, we received many questions, many, of course, appointments in our law firm. And the first thing that we check, if someone is concerned, if someone is obligated to make the informative application of Model 720, is if they are residents or not. Are you resident in Spain? Did you become resident in Spain? Are you tax resident in Spain? If the answer is yes, then we need to be concerned about the obligation of presenting Modelo 720 application form, tax form Modelo 720. Let's put some examples, Ignacio. I mean, as you and myself, we deal with that in many appointments. If someone was applied for residency last year, and obtained last year residency, but last year was on tax terms, on tax matters, was non-resident, for example, obtained residency in the second semester, let's say, for example, in November 2020, 2020 was non-resident for tax matters. So on that matters, I mean, this year is really the first year, it's going to be tax resident, so the obligation to prepare Modelo 720 will be next year from 1st of January to 31st of December. Let's put another example, someone who obtained residency at the beginning of last year. So last year was not just resident, was also tax resident in Spain. So obligation regarding worldwide income in Spain from April to June must be submitted in Spain, declare and pay taxes accordingly, but also now, as we are in voluntary period on time, from the 1st of January to 31st of March of this year, as it was last year tax resident, this year must submit Modelo 720. But the question is, if I'm resident, all the residents has to submit this 720 application form? Well, the answer is no. I mean, just those who have assets outside Spain, abroad Spain, not the Spanish ones, abroad Spain, outside Spain, which is valued more than 50,000 euros. Each pillar, I mean, there are kind of like three pillars, three important pillars of assets, which is property, which are bank deposits, and then shares, and then funds, investment funds, trusts, and I mean, there are many complex structural financing which can be included there. So if you have, for example, you own a property in the UK or anywhere in the world, and you obtained residency last year, first thing we need to check if you were tax resident in Spain last year, and if it's not the case, then you have to submit Modelo 720 this year. If not, will be following year. And important thing, so if that value is over 50,000 euros, so first thing that we need to check, if I am resident in Spain, if I own assets, property or shares, funds, which are over bank statement, for example, bank deposits over 50,000 euros, then I need to submit Modelo 720. If I am not resident in Spain, nothing to worry about this. Nothing to worry about this. I'm not resident in Spain, even though I own properties outside of Spain, even though I own a property in Spain as non-resident, I don't have to submit Modelo 720 at all. I think this is clear. Ignacio, it's understood?
Yes, very good. Let me just send some reminders. I'm going to share with the audience here just an article. Probably they've read it. We wrote so they could have it on writing, and then here you have. Basically, as Pedro stated, the first question, Pedro, I always get in the appointments is about residency program and the taxation. So let's give you a rough tip of advice. I really don't know where most of you are abroad or here, but let's put it this way. If a calendar year in Spain, you come in July, after July, that means basically you'll be less than 183 days. As Pedro stated, if you stay less than 183 days, that means that you're going to be no tax resident in Spain. Very important now for those of you British with TIE to always look into your TIE card to see when was the issue date and when were you, because now tax office just told us, one inspector, that they have 72 sources of information. So I guess, and it's obvious, that the residency is one of them, okay? Now, as you know, different countries are gonna just inform if you left the country. So that's the criteria for you to understand whether you are a tax resident or non-tax resident. Then after that, as Pedro said, the 50,000 euros is key for you to have if you have money abroad, shares, dividends abroad, shares on companies, and property, which costs you less than 50,000 euros. It's three categories that I put you here in this article. And what is very important for you to bear in mind, if you have done it before, I know some of you have done it, and in the old days, 2012, 13, people didn't really know what to submit, what not to submit. I think you might recall, Pedro, that it was a bit of a chaos during the first year in 2013, people not having the information and you know, the fines,
yeah,
etc.
Right. Yeah.
It's very important for you to keep this in mind. If you cancel any of these products that you did declare on the 720, if you cancel by any reason, let's say inheritance, donation, cancellation, transaction, you need to submit it. That doesn't mean paying taxes, that means informing. And if any product did increase over 20,000 euros, you must update the 720. Okay, it's always important for you to double check whether is applicable to you or not. If you read and go through the article, you will see in a simple article, I know they want to keep things very complex. This is basically the three categories that you need to look at, whether you comply or you don't comply. As Pedro stated, from January to March, every year, you will have to declare it if applicable, okay? So, Pedro, I wonder whether you would like to start with some questions here, or
let me just check. Let me just check the chat, which I haven't. Let me just. Okay. Well, let's start. Yeah. Let's start with the questions and answers, and of course, let's go on with the explanation regarding Model 720. I think that basically all the three pillars about the obligation, when is someone resident or not. I mean, this thing I think is duly understood, and of course, with the article that you have shared, I think is well explained regarding that. Let's go to the first question by Alan. Thank you, Alan, for the question. And does a life insurance policy with no maturity value have to be declared? In other words, if I don't die before I'm 75, it just expires with no payout or end value. In other words, I mean, sorry, what it says, Alan. Well, thank you, Alan. I mean, technically, this life insurance do not need to be included. Am I right, Ignacio?
It's not included because it's a
there's
life
no obligation to include this life insurance. I assume that he's paying some.
It's savings. I understand, yes. Isn't it, Pedro? So there is no obligation. It's a life insurance, and I understood that he's paying just the insurance policy.
Yeah, he's like paying a fixed amount every year. Like,
fixed amount.
And it's not like savings. It's like this life insurance. So technically, it's not obligated to include it in Model 720.
Perfect. So
okay.
That's good. Thank you, then, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Richard.
Let's move on. Richard, we have an appointment on the 30th of March. If we need to file a Model 720, can it be done during our appointment? I think you started, Ignacio, regarding who has to do this, what kind of certifications are needed. I mean, which is the time limit, of course, and the 30th of March, if they have an appointment.
Right.
What do you think about?
Yeah, I understand that the appointment means with us. They have an appointment with us on the 30th of March. My recommendation, just if you contact any of our secretaries, she will send you the forms. If you read through the article, if you think you comply, we will be able to do it on the same day while you're here, but we need to have all the information before. So it's very important you send us all the information that you think it complies. We go and run through it, and on the appointment, we will lodge it while you agreeing with the figures. We normally sit down with you guys, agree that this is exact figures, so we're sure that there is not mistakes. And then once you give us the okay, we lodge it and you get your stamped copy and take it with you. Or we could do it through a video conference if by any reason we cannot see you, as we did last year because of COVID, etc., etc. Okay, Pedro.
Okay, Ignacio. Okay, let's go on for the following question by Alan. I have read it, and he says, I was resident in December last year, 2020, but spent 184 days in Spain in 2020, and I'm still fiscal resident, please. Okay, well, I mean, as I said before, I mean, maybe you obtained the residency in the second semester, but you were really physically resident more than 183 days. This is really the main rule. There are some other rules, but if you spend more than 183 days in Spain, even though you obtain residency at the end of the year, you are technically resident in Spain. And if you are technically resident in Spain on this natural year from the 1st of January to 31st of December, you are tax resident in Spain. So if that is the case, technically, you are resident and tax resident in Spain. Now, for that reason, you should be submitting Model 720.
That's correct. That's why we said, Pedro, it's very important for them to make sure of the kind of evidence to become resident. For example, if you did have the TIE, it's very crystal clear that you are 184. Now, if the application for TIE was later during the year and you just arrived, I think that question, Alan, really needs a specific advice sitting down, because you're just on the cliff, you're just on the middle. And as Pedro said, technically, yes, you are a tax resident. But I think I would like to explore a bit more, if we could be of help, or just do it through the person who you normally deal all your taxes? Okay.
I mean, of course, what about the other side? Imagine that someone obtained residency at the beginning of the year or has a permanent residency, but really didn't spend whole year in Spain. I mean, was not resident in Spain, really was outside of Spain, was not spending time physically in Spain.
The passport control, Pedro, yeah? Because probably...
Technically not, but of course, it's in case of inspection, I mean, there's a matter of proof, of course. You are, I mean, as you say, passport entries, I mean, you have to prove that you were out of Spain, and it's a matter of proof at the end, but this needs to be checked perfectly and correctly. Technically, no. In the other side.
Okay. Right.
Someone obtained residency but was not really resident.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. I'm not sure which is the following one.
I think Michael is just around. Hello, Michael. You just.
Hello, Michael.
The microphone probably is off.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I was late. I was in a Zoom appointment. Sorry.
No worries. How's the weather in Andalusia? Okay.
It's pouring down with rain.
All right.
Okay. Well, that's the same as here, yeah.
Okay, Michael, we're going to just carry on during the questions and answer about 720. I guess probably you had a lot of questions about this situation, and we're going to try. We did cover a lot, so we're going to carry on. And any issues, just let us know and raise your hands. Okay.
Excellent. Ignacio, if you like later, I can give a quick explanation of the relationship between the 720 and inheritance tax.
Yeah.
That some people don't just sort of explain the implications for inheritance.
That's important. And also, Michael, you should also inform about the recommendations about having a will or not once you really become resident in Spain. I think it's really important. We always repeat this kind of recommendations, but I think it's extremely important, and you explain it very well. Okay. Well, Ignacio, we have the following question. Yeah, the following question by Svet. Hello, Svet. Thank you for asking. I think we already answered that. It's in the other side, really. It says whenever someone had residency in Spain, for example, last year or the beginning of permanent, I think it says permanent, but was not really resident, didn't spend the 6 months or didn't spend less than 183 days in Spain. So at the end, technically, no, but of course it's difficult to demonstrate, or you should demonstrate in case you get an inspection. Okay, so Ignacio, let's move on for the following questions.
Perfect.
What about the Richard? Did we answer that?
Richard, this year we are tax resident for the first time, 2020. We were non-resident. Do we have to submit a Modelo 720 this year? I think you answered that, Pedro, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, they were not resident last year. They were not tax resident last year. I assume that they started to be tax resident this year, so they have to submit next year, 1st of January to 31st of March, 2022. They have to declare worldwide assets over 50,000 euros, whatever value they have, average rate of the last 3 months or the latest day of December. Okay?
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Right. I think, shall we move on with Taylor? Yeah?
I'm a little bit lost, Ignacio, with the questions right now. I mean, it's...
right,
Taylor.
he's saying, yeah, Taylor.
Okay.
He's talking about the live interest, I understand, yeah? On the property.
Okay, well, I also have a fruitful use agreement on the property. I mean, it's assets and rights. Fruitful use is a right, and this needs to be duly declared.
Yes.
There are some complexity when there are different ownerships or in different times of ownership of assets and rights, and which is the value that needs to be put on the total value, and apart from that for the percentage, but in this case needs to be declared.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I think there's a question by Julian. If you have a private pension fund worth more than 50,000 euros, does this need to be declared? I mean, of course, yes. I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, if the fund value is over 50,000 euros, this is what we said at the beginning, needs to be declared in the Modelo 720. We repeat again, this is an informative declaration. It's not to pay taxes, it's just to inform tax office that you have these assets which are valued over 50,000 euros worldwide in whatever country and not in Spain. you have this value, these funds or property which is valued and is in a Spanish bank or in a Spanish property, this do not have to be declared. This is already declared. Okay. Okay, let's move on, Ignacio. With
right, Guy's asking, what if my stay here was extended because of COVID? My home and all my income and assets are in Canada. I received my non-lucrative visa in 2020 and arrived mid-November 2020. I was supposed to go back March 1st. So my understanding, Pedro, is he did move to Spain in November 2020. So he was non-resident for 2020. So this year he will not have to declare the 720 because last year he was non-resident. Is that correct, Pedro? Yeah.
Yeah. This is there are a lot of discrepancy on I would say. Technically he was resident 2020. He applied for that. He obtained residency in 2020. But what we said before, he was not because of COVID or whatever the reason.
Oh, he was extended. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
And but there are discrepancy, and we don't get a criteria really on tax matters. What my recommendation is, in case of this adapt, do it now. Do it now, and because if you don't do it now, you will have to do it next year. So anyway.
But Pedro, just I think he already. He got the residency in November 2020, but probably he's been more than 6 months. Is that basically what Guy says? My stay was extended, but I really don't know whether his extension was more than 6 months or not. Guy, if you want to clarify that,
it looks like that he obtained a residency probably beginning of the year, but he arrived in November 2020. But anyway, I mean, let's.
The key of the case, Pedro. Let's make it clear. If they were more than 6 months in Spain, the answer is yes. If they were less than 6 months, is no. Now, I think you need to clarify, Guy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, but technically, when someone obtains residency at the beginning, I mean, it's unless, I mean, could be an inspection, needs to be demonstrated that he was not in Spain. With you said about the flights and everything and consuming of, for example, electricity and water in a different part of the world. But of course, technically, I mean, there's a discrepancy on this. Of course, they were not resident really in Spain. The answer is no, but technically yes, because they obtained residency at the beginning of the year.
Because there are a lot of people, because of COVID, they had to stay. And tax office being very clear, if you stay more than 6 months, you need to comply. Even though it was major force, they take it as more than 6 months as a resident, Guy. So I think that pretty much is the answer. We've got Sandrine here saying, and I think that's a good question, how do you determine the value of a property, a flat in the UK? The flat was bought for less than 50,000 euros. Okay, Sandrine, that's really the answer. If the purchase price, whether it was 20, 30, 40 years, it doesn't matter, was less than 50,000 euros at the time, the answer is you don't need to comply with 720. Okay, even though it's worth £500,000, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so it's very clear. As we said, bank account, 50,000 euros, either joint or individual, shares, bonds, again, 50,000 euros, and property purchase value. Just bear that in mind. Okay, let's move on, Pedro. Lawrence here. I became a fiscal resident of Spain in 2019. I'm unsure if my assessor has submitted Modelo 720 in 2020, but I plan to submit it in 31st of March 2021. I have property, mutual funds, and banks outside Spain with assets above 50,000. What are the impacts of doing this? Well, the fines, probably you're talking about, it's a good question, Lawrence. As you know, Modelo 720 is being taken to the High Court in Europe. Especially because of the fines that are being given. I don't think the 720 will disappear, but the fines will really be reduced to a different amount. Okay, for example, the fines for not lodging your income tax return is X amount, but 720 is being very, very aggressive to all of us, expats and expats. Okay, so that's really the answer to it. Now, there are two, as today, there are two types of fines: for doing it late or for not even lodging. I've seen a few fines. A few fines. Normally, the most dangerous one is when the home country disclose the assets to the tax office, and the tax office sends you a letter and say you didn't pay income tax return, tax return, plus you didn't comply with 720. You didn't do anything. So here we go. You have a big fine. If you did it incorrectly, I don't know if Pedro did see some things like that. I don't think they ever get back to you because it's incorrect. If it was done in good faith, it's much more worse not declaring it incorrectly because of missing information, even though they are entitled to give you a fine. Again, 720 and tax office now are basically not being very aggressive to consumers, to citizens, because of it's being contested in Europe. These fines, the obligation, I still think it will always last because it's just a formal declaration. And my recommendation is to double check with that your assessor. If your assessor, if you don't know whether she did it, probably she didn't do it because she wouldn't do it without you knowing. Now, I will recommend you to do it even though you're late, but it's good for you to discuss all the possible legal scenarios of lodging it late, at least for you to know, and then you make a decision what to do. Okay?
Okay.
Pedro, shall we move on, Pedro?
Yeah, the fines are extraordinary. I mean, of course, is right now, I mean, as you said, the European Union and Brussels is keeping informing Spain that they shouldn't be this way. And there are some courts, starting to be some courts, some resolution in Spain in order to reject that this is a very extraordinary fine, is overhead fines, which as minimum could be like 1,500 euros, but could rise to more than that. So it's something that is a really pain on the ass, but is 100% enforced right now. So if you have the obligation, our recommendation is to submit it and well, wait until probably this obligation is reduced, is rejected, is eliminated, is amended in some way, and it's something that whenever it's an obligation, tax office is checking that. Until last year, I think it was around between I don't know exactly the amount, but between 5,000 people and 6,000 people received a notification by tax office because they didn't declare the model 720 from the very first beginning, from 2013 until I think it was last year. So, well, it's something that tax office is in some ways is informing, but a recommendation, even if you didn't do it on time, even you didn't do it in the year that you should have done it, our recommendation is to do it. I mean, as a voluntary. I mean, not to receive a letter from tax office because the fines could be higher. Okay, let's move on, Ignacio, for the following questions. Okay,
what we're going to do, I'm going to pass over to Juan for now. Give us 1 minute, and then we'll pass over to Michael to talk about the impact on 720 on inheritance tax. Juanfran, cuando quieras, and Michael will join us. Over to you.
The world turns, and with each turn, a change. And each change makes it more complex, unpredictable, enigmatic. The world keeps turning. And from the Pellicer and Heredia practice, we anticipate everything that is going to happen. Brexit, artificial intelligence, new commercial borders, legal tech. The world keeps turning, and it commands the reliance on international lawyers who are capable of interpreting this new reality with integrity, honesty, and transparency, offering answers to so many new questions. Whatever it is, ask us. At Pellicer and Heredia, we know how.
Okay, Michael, can you hear us now? The microphone is off. You need to turn on the microphone, Michael. There we go.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Now
Yes,
we can hear
now
you, Michael.
we can hear you.
I love the video. It's fantastic. Spectacular. Very good.
Thank you, Michael. Over to you about the impact on 720 and
Okay.
inheritance tax.
Okay, I know the subject today is 720, so I don't want to transgress too much and talk about too much about inheritance tax, but yes, about the relationship with the 720 form. When clients come to see us and they're the beneficiaries of an estate, they need to realize that if they are non-residents of Spain, that's the beneficiaries, then they only have to declare to the Spanish tax authorities the assets that they're receiving in Spain. But very important, if they are residents in Spain, they have to declare what they're receiving worldwide. And this is where the connection with the 720 form comes in. Some people will come to see us as beneficiaries of an estate, and they just think about the estate in the UK that's going to be dealt with by the lawyer in the UK, etc., etc. But they need to realize that if, for example, let's say it was their mother that passed away, if their mother was declaring a 720 form, she will have declared to the Spanish tax authorities what assets she had in other countries. So if you're a beneficiary receiving from your mother who has made a 720 form, you must inform the solicitor that's handling probate in Spain that you need to inform them, because even though he doesn't need to add those assets to the inheritance deed, to the probate deed, when he does the declaration for the inheritance tax, he must declare those assets in other countries, because remember, the tax man already knows about them because of the 720 form.
That's right.
And we have seen this happen before, not through us, because we now insist a lot, please tell us if your mum made a 720 form, you must tell us what the assets are, because otherwise you're going to get yourself into trouble. And we've had clients that have come to us and we've wound up their estate, or somebody's wound up their estate, and now they're going to do the 720 form. And they suddenly realize, well, okay, I've got these assets that I've inherited from my mum here. But I also inherited a flat in London worth £300,000. And now I want to declare it on the 720 form. And you say, when did you get this asset? So I inherited it from my mum. Why didn't you declare it on your inheritance tax in Spain? Mm-hmm. And they've suddenly got this problem. We're seeing this quite a lot. So the only important thing here is to be honest and tell your clients, when the solicitor says, if you're a resident, you've got to tell me about all your worldwide assets, you must tell him. And if your mum actually made the 720 form, then there's just no escaping. So to not declare it on the inheritance tax form is crazy. So it must be done. That's the relationship between the 720 form and the inheritance tax.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, have you received many letters from the taxman with regards to these kind of issues? Could you tell us a bit about whether in Almeria you managed to receive these kind of letters? Inspections on 720, or have you experienced, or is it just more the tax office about the income tax return, what you have experienced so far?
Well, enough here, because we deal mainly now, just with inheritance issues, we don't actually do the 720 form. So where we've seen the problem is in relation to the inheritance tax, as we've just described. So I don't really know if they are sending out loads of letters to people that are not declaring the 720 form. We are finding this problem of people that coming to see us that have not been declaring the 720 form. They haven't received a letter, but now they're thinking, wow, what do we do now? We haven't declared it before. Now we don't know to own up, not own up. That problem we're seeing a lot. We recommend that everyone that's got assets abroad, and as a resident here, they must do their 720 form, because the world's getting smaller, the data, everything's on databases now, everything's sort of connected. So it's a must. So if you haven't been doing your 720 form up to now, what we recommend is go to a tax expert, tell them what the situation is, and face it now, because it's better for you to volunteer the information and own up to what you've done wrong than for the tax man to write to you because of the difference in the penalties if it's good faith, bad faith.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Let's move on because time is running out. Pedro, I think next question we have from Andy. How do you calculate the average balance of the bank account over the last 3 months of the year? Well, Andy, you need to have the value on the 31st of December, and that normally is enough, but the bank will give you an average during the 3 months. You should have it in the bank, okay, that figure. But what we need is the exact figure on the 31st of December. And if you could get, if it's the same figure, that's no problem. If it was different over the 3 months, then we need that figure. How do you calculate? It's just the bank will give you that average. Okay, Pedro, shall we move on with Joe?
Okay, hello, good day. Thanks for your presentation. Thank you, Joe. With regards to the residency question, are you referring to your tax residency status or just of the prior year for which one must file? Okay, well, let's repeat again about this, Joe. Probably it's a little bit difficult to explain, but it's really simple. Let's divide residency matters on immigration issues and tax matters, being tax resident. Once you become resident, once you obtain, for example, a non-lucrative visa, once you enter in Spain, from that day you are resident in Spain. You obtain in the following days the residence card, and you are resident in Spain. When do you become resident on tax matters? Because you already became tax resident in Spain. And when do you become tax resident in Spain? When you spend more than 183 days on natural year. So the first year, maybe you are not tax resident, but the following years, it is presumed by tax office that you are resident, that you obtain residency on immigration, and it is presumed that you are living in Spain. So for that matters, you are tax resident also in Spain. Maybe the first year, if you obtain residency in the second semester, and you really enter in Spain in the second semester, you are not tax resident. But the following year, you are tax resident in Spain for sure. So one thing is residency on migration, and the other thing is tax resident, but of course it's connected.
Right, good, Pedro. Peter is saying, I'm currently applying for my non-lucrative visa with yourself, as I intend to retire in Spain commencing April, May this year, and will not be working in Spain. Do I have to declare my bank account in the UK containing investment and cash, and also I own a house that my son lives in, again, in the UK, Pedro? Well, basically here, he will have to declare it as, again, Peter, as long as you have, not this year, because if you're doing the non-lucrative visa, that means you will get it today. Let's see what day you're gonna get your TIE. Once you get your TIE, and you come over to Spain, we will have a definite answer whether you're gonna be Spanish tax resident or not, and whether you'll have to declare it because it's over 50,000 euros. So the answer to that, Peter, it depends on the date you will be resident in Spain. Okay. Now, I presume you don't have a property in Spain. If you did, you will be lodging your non-resident income tax return from previous years. And whenever you change it over, then you'll start doing your tax return here in Spain. So that's basically the answer, Peter. Let's move on then. Julian, Pedro,
okay.
Will you
Julian, thank you, Julian, and Ian. Well, I will read the following two, which is that what if the pension only is declared when is the pension only declared when an amount is taken as income? And the second question is, what are the tax rates on the declared assets? Well, there are no tax rates on the declared assets. I mean, this is an informative declaration. We repeat again, you are not paying taxes by declaring this, but of course this is connected with wealth tax. Of course, Valencian region, this is not the main point of this webinar today, but at the end, whatever value you own in Spain and worldwide, we're talking about wealth tax. There are some thresholds and some deductions about your permanent home in Spain, but it will be connected and we will, I think, Ignacio, we should make another webinar, informative webinar regarding wealth tax, as it is extremely important also.
Correct.
And regarding the pension, and if it's only declared when an amount is taken out as income, I mean, pensions are not declared. There are some exceptions. I mean, in case that someone has a right to get a lump sum anytime, but if someone is taking some amount in this case and leave this money, this amount outside of Spain, and this is over 50,000 euros, repeat again, I mean, this is something in order to declare assets and rights abroad outside of Spain, which are over 50,000 euros. If this is the case, then will have to be declared and submitted in the following tax year, always from the period of 1st of January to 31st of March. Okay, well, let's move on to the following question from Lawrence. Thank you, Lawrence, for the question.
I think, Pedro, somebody is asking here as well about the how does it work? And I think it's a good time as well to think, always good time to do tax planning, but I'm going to just put you here in the chat another article about La Renta, right? Is income tax return. It gives you a little bit of information to all of you. It's being really updated recently, 1 week ago, and it's a sliding scale. Probably will be slightly different with Andalusia and with Murcia, because you know the tax is split between the autonomous communities and the state. But it could really give you a really good information for you to know where you stand. So here you have, I share with you guys on the chat the article, so you could read. Is a lot of specific information though. Pedro, shall we move on?
Okay,
with the next one.
Let's move on. I think it's let me just. I think it was Lawrence is regarding. I have an international unit-linked bond, okay, for Spanish tax residents. Okay, well, guys, giving that information about Spanish tax residents issued by STM Group PLC of Gibraltar. Okay, I filed a tax compliance questionnaire when this bond was purchased, and my Spanish residents data, including my NIE, was provided. That is needs to be included in 720. I mean, this is already informed the tax office in Spain. Is really connected with the Spanish tax office, or is not.
It's compliant bond, isn't it? Like a compliant bond.
Yeah. So in this case, it's not necessary.
Yeah. But it's always good to ask the provider. But the answer should be: it all looks like is being declared by the provider. Okay. Right. Next one, Pedro. I think I got lost with the latest one.
Yeah. Okay. What if I have a property, Ignacio, in the UK? How is this viewed from a Spanish tax view? Also, I have some rental properties. Again, how is this viewed by Spanish taxes? Well, let's see about Modelo 720, but also let's think about tax return, about the income that is obtaining as a rental from the UK properties. Is that right, Ignacio?
Say it again, Pedro. I lost the track.
As regarding, I mean, someone is owning a property, as what we said. If you own a property in this case in the UK and you obtain residency, let's say last year, tax resident last year, this year you must submit Modelo 720 just owning a property which it was valued on purchase price more than 50,000 euros. Or if you own different properties, or if you own one property 50%, but the value of the property when was bought was more than 50,000 euros. Okay, well, in this case, you have and you must inform tax office in Spain through this Modelo 720. Repeat again, this is an informative declaration. It's just to inform to tax office, this is the property I have in UK, this is the street, and this is the property I own, 50%, 100%, whatever. And then, of course, tax office, they may inspect or they may not with the tax office in revenue in UK. Maybe they get information about if you obtain some income that you have not declared in Spain. This is why it is important to inform your tax advisor about property that you have abroad. And of course, if you get some income, some rentals on that properties, which are the income that you obtain as resident in Spain, but you obtain this income worldwide, which are the costs that you are incurring on these rentals. And of course, there are some deductions with the base in Spain, according to the income tax declaration. On these circumstances is deducted 60%. There are some information that needs to be included, let's say the name of the tenant, this is long-term contract. But you need to inform your tax advisor about your income, about your costs. In order to be a net per amount will be deducted. and that would be included into the general rules of tax return in Spain. Okay, I think that one is already answered. Let's move on, Ignacio, for the following one.
Which one is next one, Pedro?
Yeah, okay.
What's the name? So I can follow up.
Philip, I think it's probably the next one.
Philip, yes. Right. Yeah, as I have never rent out my holiday home, do I need to declare these? And if so, who to? Well, I think, Philip, you're talking about a property abroad. And if the property, about declaring the income, the answer in Spain is yes. But this will be from April until June. But if you're talking about 720, if the property, as Pedro stated, is worth, or it was worth at purchase price below 50,000 euros, no. If it's over 50,000 euros, you must comply. Now, we need to study as well, when were you resident, to work out all the implications. I've been told by my bank that their charges are to double to 30 euros per quarter, as I don't use the bank other than to pay direct debits. Is there a recommendation to use another bank other than Sabadell? But this is something extra, Philip, and a lot of expats are asking what can they do to reduce the bank charges. Yes, I agree with you, Philip. You should either negotiate with them if you've got product with them. Actually, it happened to us recently. They are charging us to do bank transfer, even within Europe. And we did ask them to remove it, and they have done it. Depending on how much loyalty probably you have with the bank and how much business you bring to the bank. That's basically the negotiation. And yes, we can recommend you several that we use on our client account that they are not charging us. The problem we are facing now, Philip, is bank transfer from here to the UK now is a non-European country, and they're charging us to transfer. And probably we're encouraging people to shop around, look for currency exchange company to see whether they don't charge you, okay? But yes, the answer, we can put you in touch with some banks that we're happy with, and I know of one that probably only charge you €3 to make a bank transfer. So, okay. Now we have Graham, Pedro. Will you carry on with Graham?
Let me just read it.
What do you expect?
Graham, okay, what do you expect the outcome of the European Court of Justice decision to be? I think that I assume that 𝐬𝐮 is the European Court. And do you think Spain will be compelled by the European Court or reduce the fines and penalties? Okay, well, regarding, let's move on. I mean, what are really the two pillars, or why? Thank you, Graham, for the question. I think it's a fantastic question. Why I consider that I agree with what Graham says is this should be rejected by two reasons. Brussels considers that this kind of regime, this kind of tax informative declaration constitutes really I would say a restriction on the freedom. I mean, one of the pillars of the European Union is the freedom of movement of capitals. I mean, you know, workers' capitals, and there are 4 pillars. One of them is movement of capitals. And of course, this restricts totally if someone wants to invest outside Spain in order to have the obligation to declare assets abroad when someone is resident in Spain. So it considers really a threat on the freedom. But additionally to this, and this is what I'm Ignacio and myself, we are really reluctant to this, and we recommend to do this voluntary. We insist on doing this. Is regarding the sanctions. It's disproportionate. I think this is the word. Is Ignacio? Disproportionate in English. Disproportionate sanctions, fines are too high according to just an informative declaration. If you compare to other kind of tax offense or tax declarations, or someone who avoids some information on taxes, I mean, in this case, it's an informative declaration. It doesn't mean that the tax office is not going to receive any money, but it's really disproportionate. It is threatening people on this. And I assume European Court of Justice, by these two arguments, which is motivated from some years and I think that at the end, and I agree with Graham, I mean, will be reduce the fines, will be reduce the penalties, and will be reduce the threat or the pressure on avoiding this liberty of freedom of movement of capitals. I hope, Graham, I have answered this question.
Yeah. Okay. Richard, if we didn't know anything about the Modelo 720 and another tax lawyer told us we were not tax resident of Spain, will we have to pay fines since we actually arrived in April 2018? Well, if in April 2018 you came to Spain and you stay more than 6 months here in Spain, the answer, Richard, technical answer is you are tax resident in Spain because of residency. The dual taxation, if you read the dual taxation treaty between UK, Spain, the United States, Spain, the Article 3 really established the situation where you're considered to be resident or not, okay? Now, there are exceptions, Richard. For example, if you have a fiscal certificate in the UK, in the United States, on writing, which some people are getting, that you were tax resident abroad, if you ever receive a letter, you could always disclose that information, and I'm pretty sure the taxman will close your file. Okay, so I gave you very good advice here. Now, I don't know whether you probably stay more than 6 months, but you were tax resident in a different country. I would have recommended, if that was the case, one, the certificate from a different country confirming you are tax resident in another country. And two, if you had a property in Spain, to have the non-resident tax return filed before any letter arrives. Okay, so you could discuss it with your lawyer, or we could talk through in a video conference if you're not close to our office. Okay, let's move on, Pedro, because time is running out.
Okay, I think it's Georgiana. I think it's the following question. My first question is about assets in the US as opposed to Spain. Could it be beneficial to transfer our assets to Spain when we become residents rather than keeping them in the US? Well, the answer is no need. There is no need really to transfer assets into Spain. I mean, if you want to get those investments from US into Spain because you see attractive some investments, perfect, but there is no obligation, really. I mean, there is no obligation, and no one will obligate you to do that in Spain. I mean, absolutely not.
Yeah, so actually, Pedro, probably the best for her will be wherever she gets most benefits.
Exactly.
From you know, because declaring is not an issue, and the tax you're going to pay anyway, whether you make the income here or there. So
exactly.
Try to make the most out of it.
Simple. So, Georgiana, I mean, of course, if you see it attractive an investment in Spain, or you see more confident, more peace of mind just to have your investments and your assets in Spain, perfect. But there's no obligation, and will not give you like more benefits really. And second, are we allowed to declare our US debits along with the US assets? Could they mitigate our Spanish tax burden? On the informative declaration model 720, there is nothing to do with the debits. It's just you declare your assets and value it. Of course, with a wealth tax is different. Just in order to value, if it's an obligation to declare if you cross the threshold or the minimum requirements. But for the model 720, it is not an obligation. It's not an issue, of course, to inform about the debits. It's just to inform about your assets, whatever value, or how to value, as we said in property purchase price on the average rate of the last 3 months on bank statements, or the latest date, 31st of December, but not the debits. Okay, so let's move on. The following question, Ignacio, is from Ian. Thank you, Ian. So it says, if we enter with a non-lucrative visa and then buy a property in Spain, what impact does this have, positive or negative?
Well, actually, I think at the end of the day, Ian, well, thank you for your question. Non-lucrative visa, number one, as probably you heard from previous webinars we did, you don't have to purchase a property to get a non-lucrative visa. You can rent even if necessary. And the impact is just about whatever you buy in Spain, you don't need to declare it on 720. But please don't feel, don't have fear on declaring the assets, because declaring even a property abroad doesn't really mean you're going to pay tax. I would like to bring here just a lot of people you guys don't know, and I take the opportunity here to tell you that there is a big allowance in Spain about renting property, even renting property abroad. So from, and I know a lot of people doesn't know, and this is attractive if you're renting out a property, but this is just a seminar for income tax return. But I will just give you some tips of advice. 60% of the net is tax-free in Spain. That means only you're going to pay tax on 40% of the net income of your rental property worldwide. But this is just for income tax return. So this is something for you to bear in mind. But Ian, going back to your question, positive or negative, from a visa point of view, is always good to have a property if you do it before, but not necessarily an obligation. And for the income tax point of view, it doesn't really affect neither 720, because it's a property in Spain and you will never have to declare it as a worldwide asset. Pedro, let's move on with Andy. Since we're just running out of time, yes.
Okay, it's from Andy. Okay, here's the following one. Andy, correct. As I became, is that when I became the Spanish resident from 18 September 2020. I will read a little bit more rapid. Since I was not in Spain for more than 183 days in 2020, so in 2020, he was no more than 183 days. I was not a Spanish tax resident in 2020. Do I need to complete more than 720 in 2021, declaring my worldwide wealth as 31st of December 2020, even though as at the date of 31st of December 2020, I was not tax resident in the year? And then it says in the second paragraph, I will spend more than 193 days in Spain in 2021. I believe it starts. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, this question, I think we focused on that at the beginning, is regarding, I mean, of course, he became resident in last year in September, so the second semester, and actually he was physically less than 183 days in Spain in 2020. He says, I was not in Spain for more than, so he was less than 183 days in 2020. So he doesn't have to submit. In 2020, and you were non-resident on tax purposes, even though you obtained residency in September on immigration issues. So this year, you say you're going to spend more than 183 days. It is, in fact, it's presumed that you are tax resident in Spain in 2021. And as I agree with what you say, you have to submit from the 1st of January to 31st of March of 2021, worldwide assets if they are over 50,000 euros, as we have explained. Okay, so so for the question that you made, Andy, in the latest question is yes. The answer is yes. Okay.
Okay, what we're going to do, Pedro, we're going to put our emails here just in case people need personal advice.
Okay, because there are plenty of, okay. You have already include my email. Okay, that's perfect.
Michael Davies as well had to leave from Oaxaca. I know there is some question for Michael, and I will invite them to contact direct. Here is Pedro and myself. I think we answered most of the questions. The time is running out because it's 6 o'clock and we need to leave. I'm going to pass over to Juanfran and leave you with the latest video, and happy to help you in the future with questions. Try to do things by the book before the 31st of March, because declaring, don't be afraid of declaring. It's important. If we could be of help, that's great. If not, we will see you in our next webinar. So thank you for your patience. I know it's a very thick subject, very worrying, but we've been doing a lot of 720s and we're very up to date. So any issues, let us know, and please do not worry. Thank you for today, Pedro.
Okay, thank you, Ignacio. Thank you, everyone who has been listening, and I hope everything was more or less clear. And of course, if you need any help or any other question that you may have, please contact us.
Okay, I will leave you with Juanfran and see you soon. Thank you.
Trust is vital when you're in another country. If you want to buy a home, set up business relationships, or apply for a residence permit, you need to be able to count on the best independent legal aid. Pellicer and Heredia is an international firm of lawyers with over 20 years experience and one single aim: for you to live at ease in Spain. In order to give you a clear, streamlined, and fast response, we work with a cross-disciplinary team of professionals specializing in the main legal fields: civil law, foreigners' affairs, business law, tax and financial law, and international law. And to ensure that you're kept informed and up to date with everything, we have 6 offices on the Eastern Coast. Whether you're from here or abroad, we will always stand by you and speak your language. Our relationship is based on openness, professionalism, and a commitment to finding legal solutions in your best interests and for your peace of mind. Pellicer and Heredia,